Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab. Now, let's begin. Byron Keller stepped off the red-eye from Chicago with grit in his eyes and a persistent headache that 3 cups of airport coffee couldn't touch. 48 hours of depositions had left him exhausted, but there was something satisfying about dismantling lies with nothing but words and patterns. As a forensic linguist consulting for federal prosecutors, Byron spent his days analyzing threatening letters, ransom notes, and digital communications to identify authors and establish intent. The work was meticulous, often tedious, but it scratched an itch in his brain that nothing else could reach. He'd been doing this for 8 years now, ever since leaving his professorship at Northwestern. The pay was better, the stakes higher, and most importantly, it kept him sharp. Byron had always believed that language revealed truth. Every word choice, every syntax pattern, every punctuation mark told a story about the person behind it. His phone buzzed as he walked through Logan Airport's terminal. A text from his wife, Evelyn. "Call me when you land. Everything's fine. Everything's fine." 2 words that meant absolutely nothing coming from Evelyn. In their 12 years of marriage, Byron had learned to read between her lines. "Everything's fine" meant she was managing something she didn't want to burden him with. "Everything's fine" meant she'd already made decisions without consulting him. "Everything's fine" meant things were decidedly not fine. He called anyway. It rang 4 times before she picked up. "Hey, you're back early," Evelyn said, her voice carrying that particular brightness she used when performing normalcy. Byron heard dishes clattering in the background. Flight got in on time for once. "How's Emma?" "Oh, she's great. Playing the yard right now with Santiago. He stopped by to help with that fence post you mentioned." Byron's jaw tightened. Santiago Webster, Evelyn's younger brother, had a way of inserting himself into their lives at the most inconvenient times. The man was 34, perpetually between jobs, and possessed what Byron privately called weaponized charm, that ability to make people overlook his failures because he told good stories and laughed at the right moments. "I thought we were going to hire someone to do that," Santiago offered. "You know how he is. He likes to help." That defensive edge crept into Evelyn's voice, the one that appeared whenever Byron expressed even mild skepticism about her family. Byron didn't push it. He'd learned that lesson early in their marriage. The Websters were a tight unit. Evelyn, Santiago, and their mother Shirley, who lived in a retirement community in Connecticut. Evelyn's father had died when she was 16, and somehow that loss had calcified their family dynamics into something rigid and tribal. You were either with them completely, or you were the outsider questioning their bonds. "I'll be home in an hour," Byron said. "Traffic's light. Drive safe. Love you." "Love you too." He hung up and stood for a moment in the terminal's fluorescent wash, watching travelers stream past with their rolling suitcases and coffee cups and tired faces. There was something about Santiago that had always bothered him, something he couldn't quite articulate. It wasn't any one thing. It was a collection of small moments that added up to an uneasy sum. The way Santiago's eyes would linger on women in restaurants. The jokes that went just slightly too far. The time Byron had caught him going through their medicine cabinet during Thanksgiving dinner, claiming he'd just been looking for Advil. But Evelyn adored her brother. She saw him as the boy who'd helped her through their father's death, who'd made her laugh when their mother fell apart. She didn't see, or refused to see, what Byron saw. A 34-year-old man who'd never held a job longer than 18 months, who borrowed money from their mother and never paid it back, who always had an excuse ready and a story to explain away his failures. The drive home through suburban Massachusetts felt longer than usual. Byron lived in Wellesley, in one of those neighborhoods where the houses had names instead of just numbers. The Preston House, Willowbrook Manor. Theirs was called Northfield Cottage, though there was nothing cottage-like about the 4-bedroom colonial with its manicured lawn and professionally landscaped gardens. Evelyn had inherited money when her father died, a life insurance policy worth enough to make their lives comfortable. Byron's income was substantial, but the house, the private school for Emma, the lifestyle they maintained, that came largely from Evelyn's inheritance. It was something neither of them talked about, but Byron felt it sometimes, that subtle shift in power when financial decisions needed to be made. He pulled into the driveway and saw Santiago's truck parked at an angle, taking up space that should have been Byron's. His brother-in-law emerged from the backyard, wiping his hands on his jeans. Santiago was tall and lean, with the kind of casual good looks that made people trust him immediately. He had Evelyn's dark hair and their father's easy smile. "Byron, man, you're home early." Santiago crossed the lawn with his hand extended. "How was Chicago?" Byron shook his hand, noting the firm grip that lasted just a beat too long. "Productive. Thanks for helping with the fence." "Hey, family, right?" Santiago's smile was wide and warm. "Emma's been helping me. Kid's got a good arm, been throwing the ball around." "Where is she?" "Inside with Ev, getting cleaned up for dinner." Santiago lowered his voice conspiratorially. "Listen, I wanted to ask you something. You still got those connections with the prosecutor's office? I'm thinking about maybe going back to school, getting into law enforcement. Figured you might know some people who could point me in the right direction." Byron had heard variations of this conversation before. Santiago's career aspirations changed with the seasons. Last year, it had been real estate. Before that, personal training. "I can make some calls," Byron said, knowing he wouldn't. "Appreciate it, man. Really." Santiago clapped him on the shoulder. "I should take off. Tell Ev I'll see her Thursday for lunch." Byron watched him drive away, then headed inside. The house smelled like garlic and tomatoes, Evelyn's pasta sauce, the one recipe she'd mastered. Emma came running from the kitchen, her dark hair flying behind her. She was 7, small for her age, with Evelyn's expressive eyes and Byron's tendency to observe before speaking. "Daddy!" She crashed into his legs, and he scooped her up. "Hey, Ladybug, how was your day?" "Good. Uncle Santiago taught me about birds." "Did you know crows can remember faces for years and years?" "I didn't know that." "Did he tell you they can also hold grudges?" Emma giggled. "That's silly." Byron set her down, and she ran back to the kitchen. He followed, finding Evelyn at the stove, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She turned and smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the woman he'd married, before the inheritance, before the house in Wellesley, before Santiago became a regular fixture in their lives. "How was the flight?" she asked. "Fine. Uneventful." He moved to the wine rack and selected a bottle of red. "Santiago seems good." "He is. He's really turning things around, Byron. He's been sober for 3 months." Byron paused in the act of opening the wine. "Sober? I didn't know he had a problem." Evelyn's face tightened. "It wasn't a problem exactly. He was just going through a rough patch. But he's better now. He's been going to meetings." This was new information, and it bothered Byron that he was only learning about it now. "What kind of meetings?" "AA, and some therapy. Mom's been helping him pay for it." Evelyn stirred the sauce with more force than necessary. "I know you're skeptical about Santiago, but he's trying. He really is." Byron poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to Evelyn. "I'm not skeptical. I just want to make sure he's okay." "He is. And Emma loves having him around. It's good for her to have family nearby." They ate dinner as a family, Emma chattering about her day at school, about the crow facts Uncle Santiago had taught her, about her best friend Mia, who was getting a puppy. Byron listened and nodded and tried to ignore the small voice in the back of his mind that insisted something was wrong. That night, after Emma was asleep and Evelyn was watching her true crime documentary in the living room, Byron sat at his home office and opened his laptop. He told himself he was just being thorough, just satisfying his curiosity. But his fingers moved across the keyboard with purpose, pulling up databases he had access to through his consulting work. Santiago Webster, DOB March 15, 1991. Byron clicked through public records, court filings, anything that might explain the unease that had been building in his chest all evening. There was a DUI from 2 years ago, a small claims suit from a landlord, an arrest for public intoxication that had been dismissed. Nothing major. Nothing that would explain why Byron's instincts were screaming at him to pay attention. He closed the laptop and sat in the darkness of his office, listening to the sounds of his house settling for the night. Somewhere in the walls, a pipe creaked. Down the hall, Emma's nightlight cast a pale glow under her door. "Everything's fine," Evelyn had said. But Byron Keller had built a career on understanding that what people said and what they meant were often 2 very different things. The call came on a Tuesday morning while Byron was in San Diego, sitting through a pretrial conference that had dragged on for 3 hours. His phone vibrated against the conference table, and he glanced down to see an unfamiliar number with a 617 area code. Boston. He let it go to voicemail, made his apologies to the legal team, and stepped into the hallway. The voicemail made his blood run cold. Mr. Keller, this is Rebecca Morrison from Massachusetts General Hospital, Emergency Department. Your daughter Emma was brought in approximately 2 hours ago with serious injuries. Your wife is with her now. Please call us back at this number immediately. Byron's hand shook as he dialed. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. The hospital's hold music, the fluorescent lights above him, the woman's voice when she finally picked up. Mr. Keller? I'm transferring you to Dr. Chen. He's treating your daughter. Another wait. Then a male voice, calm and professional. Mr. Keller, I'm Dr. Michael Chun. Emma is stable, but she sustained significant injuries. She has 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding in her abdomen, and severe bruising. We've stopped the internal bleeding, but we're monitoring her closely. What happened? Byron's voice didn't sound like his own. Your wife can provide more details about the incident. Emma's sedated right now, but her vitals are stable. We'll be keeping her in pediatric ICU for observation. I'm in San Diego. I can be there in 6 hours. Your wife mentioned you were traveling. We'll take good care of her until you arrive, Mr. Keller. Byron hung up and immediately called Evelyn. She answered on the first ring, her voice wrecked. Byron, she's okay. The doctors say she's going to be okay. What happened, Evelyn? What the hell happened? A car. She was playing in the front yard, and a car came around the corner too fast and clipped her. Oh God, Byron, I was inside for just a minute. I was just getting her a snack. Her voice dissolved into sobs. Byron closed his eyes and tried to think past the panic surging through his veins. Did they catch the driver? No, they drove off. Someone called 911, and I heard the sirens, and Byron, there was so much blood. I'm getting on the next flight. I'll be there as soon as I can. Stay with her. Don't leave her alone. I won't. I promise. Hurry. The next 6 hours were a blur of airports and anxiety. Byron called his mother in Ohio, who promised to pray. He called his boss and explained the situation. He sat in uncomfortable airport chairs and stared at his phone, waiting for updates that came in sporadic text from Evelyn. Still stable. Sleeping. Doctor says surgery went well. She squeezed my hand. She knows I'm here. Byron landed at Logan at 8:30 p.m. and drove straight to Mass General, abandoning his rental car in a loading zone and running through the hospital's automatic doors. The pediatric ICU was on the 4th floor. He found Evelyn in the waiting area, her face pale and drawn, her eyes red from crying. They held each other without speaking. Then Evelyn led him to Emma's room. Nothing could have prepared him for seeing his daughter like that. Emma looked impossibly small on the hospital bed, connected to machines that beeped and hummed. Her face was bruised, her arm in a cast, her chest wrapped in bandages. Byron felt something crack inside him. He pulled a chair close to the bed and took Emma's small hand in his. Her eyes were closed, her breathing steady but shallow. Evelyn sat on the other side, stroking Emma's hair. The doctor said she was lucky, Evelyn whispered. If the car had hit her any harder, she couldn't finish the sentence. Byron sat there for an hour, maybe more, just watching Emma breathe. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting medications. Dr. Chin stopped by and explained the extent of the injuries again, using terms like blunt force trauma and peritoneal hemorrhage that made Byron want to put his fist through a wall. She's young and resilient, Dr. Chin said. Children heal remarkably well, but she'll need time and rest. Around midnight, Emma's eyes fluttered open. She looked at Byron, then at Evelyn, then back at Byron. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out at first. Evelyn reached for the water cup with its bent straw. Baby, don't try to talk. You're okay. Daddy's here now. But Emma was looking at Byron with an intensity that seemed wrong for a 7-year-old on pain medication. Her eyes moved deliberately. A long blink. A short blink. Another long blink. Byron froze. Last year, when Emma had expressed interest in secret codes and spy games, Byron had taught her Morse code. They practiced it for weeks, blinking codes to each other across the dinner table, tapping out messages on the car window during long drives. It had been a game, a way to bond, a use for his linguistic skills that delighted his daughter. Emma blinked again, deliberately, slowly. UNCLE. Byron's breath stopped. HURT. His hand tightened on Emma's. MLM. Byron glanced at Evelyn, who was fussing with Emma's blanket, oblivious. KNEW. Emma's eyes locked on his father's, pleading and terrified and brave all at once. Byron blinked back slowly, carefully. DDDY. UNDRST. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she managed the tiniest nod before her eyelids drooped and she drifted back into medicated sleep. Byron sat perfectly still. His mind was racing, but his body had gone cold and calm, the way it did when he was working a case, when he needed to be analytical rather than emotional. Evelyn was still adjusting Emma's blanket, murmuring soft reassurances to their sleeping daughter. "Evelyn," Byron said quietly, "I need to talk to you in the hall. I don't want to leave her. Just for a minute. Please." They stepped into the corridor. Byron kept his voice low and level. "Tell me exactly what happened. From the beginning." Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself. "I told you. She was playing in the front yard. I was inside, making her a snack. I heard tires squealing and then Emma screaming and I ran outside and her voice cracked. She was just lying there. Where was Santiago?" Evelyn blinked. "What? Santiago wasn't there. You said he's been coming by a lot lately. He had stopped by earlier, but he left before it happened. Around noon. Why are you asking about Santiago?" Byron looked at his wife's face, the confusion, the defensiveness already forming around the edges. He thought about Emma's eyes, about the deliberate blinks, about the message his 7-year-old daughter had risked everything to send him. "No reason," he said finally. "I'm just trying to understand. Did anyone see the car? Get a license plate?" "No." The police asked the neighbors, but no one saw anything useful. It happened so fast. Byron nodded slowly. "Okay, let's go back in. I don't want her to wake up alone." They returned to Emma's room, and Byron resumed his position in the chair by her bed. Evelyn eventually dozed off in the recliner the nurses had brought in. But Byron stayed awake, watching his daughter breathe, his mind working through the implications of what she'd told him. Uncle hurt. Mom knew. Santiago had hurt Emma. And somehow, Evelyn knew about it, or had covered for him, or had helped stage the hit-and-run story. The rage that filled Byron was cold and precise. It didn't make him shake or shout. It made him think. It made him plan. Because if Santiago Webster had hurt his daughter, and if Evelyn had protected her brother instead of Emma, then Byron was going to burn their entire world down. But he would do it carefully, methodically. He would gather evidence and build a case and make absolutely certain that when justice came for Santiago, there would be no escape. Byron took out his phone and opened a new note. He began documenting everything. Times, dates, conversations, inconsistencies in Evelyn's story. He thought about Santiago's visits, his access to their home, the way Emma had become quieter over the past few months. How long had this been happening? How much had Byron missed while he was traveling for work, trusting his wife to keep their daughter safe? The sun rose over Boston and light filtered through the hospital window. Emma stirred but didn't wake. Evelyn stretched and went to get coffee. Byron sat in the chair and made a promise to his sleeping daughter. Whatever it took, however long it took, Santiago Webster was going to pay for what he'd done. And before Byron was finished, the whole world would know exactly what kind of monster Evelyn had protected. Byron spent 3 days at the hospital before the doctors cleared Emma to go home. During those 72 hours, he smiled when he was supposed to smile, nodded when Evelyn talked about how lucky they'd been, and maintained the careful facade of a concerned father processing trauma. But every spare moment he worked. He started with the physical evidence. On the second day, while Evelyn went home to shower and change clothes, Byron walked the block where the accident supposedly occurred. He wore a baseball cap pulled low and kept his hands in his pockets, studying the street with the analytical eye he'd developed through years of forensic work. The Keller house sat on a quiet residential street with a slight curve. Speed limit was 25. The yards were open, houses set back from the road with old trees and manicured lawns. If a car had come around that curve fast enough to cause the kind of damage Emma sustained, someone would have heard it. Someone would have seen it. Byron knocked on doors. He introduced himself as Emma's father, explained what had happened, and asked if anyone had seen or heard anything unusual that day. Mrs. Patricia Yates, 3 houses down, invited him in for coffee and said she'd been home all afternoon. She hadn't heard any car accident, no squealing tires, no commotion until the ambulance arrived. Such a terrible thing, she said, shaking her head. But I did see Santiago earlier that day. He drove by around lunchtime. I always notice his truck because of that loud muffler. Did you see him leave? No, dear. I was watching my program. She paused. He's your brother-in-law, isn't he? Such a charming young man. Always waves hello. Byron thanked her and moved on. For more houses, for more conversations. No one had witnessed a hit and run. No one had heard anything consistent with Evelyn's story. But 2 other neighbors mentioned seeing Santiago's truck that day. Byron returned to the hospital and found Emma awake, her eyes tracking him as he entered the room. Evelyn was reading a magazine in the corner chair. Byron kissed Emma's forehead and sat down beside her bed. How are you feeling, Ladybug? Tired, Emma whispered. Her voice was hoarse from the breathing tube they'd removed the day before. That's okay. You rest as much as you need. Byron glanced at Evelyn, who was absorbed in her magazine. He leaned closer to Emma and blinked slowly. TLL-M-E-L-A-T-E-R. Emma's eyes widened slightly, then she gave the barest nod. That evening, Byron pulled strings he normally reserved for federal cases. He had a friend of the Massachusetts State Police, Detective Rod Fuentes, who owed him a favor. Byron had helped crack a blackmail case 2 years ago by identifying the author of threatening letters. Now he called in that debt. I need traffic camera footage, Byron said over the phone, standing in the hospital parking garage where he could speak freely. My daughter was hit by a car. Hit and run. But something doesn't add up. You file a report? Fuentes asked. My wife did. But Rod, I need to see the footage myself. Can you pull it for me? Off the books. A pause. Byron, I can't just hand over evidence from an open investigation. It's my daughter, Rod. Please. Another pause, longer this time. I'll see what I can do. What intersection? Byron gave him the details, including the approximate time of the incident according to Evelyn's statement. Fuentes promised to call back within 24 hours. The next morning, Dr. Chin cleared Emma for discharge with a long list of restrictions and follow-up appointments. Byron carried his daughter to the car, while Evelyn fussed with pillows and blankets in the back seat. Emma weighed almost nothing in his arms, her small body fragile in a way that made Byron's chest ache. At home, Byron set up Emma's recovery in the living room rather than upstairs. He arranged pillows on the couch, set up her tablet with headphones, positioned water and snacks within easy reach. Evelyn hovered, adjusting things Byron had already adjusted, her anxiety manifesting in constant motion. Santiago called that afternoon. Byron heard Evelyn's voice from the kitchen, bright, reassuring. She's doing so much better, Sandy. Yes, you can visit. Maybe tomorrow? She'd love to see you. Byron felt his jaw tighten. He walked into the kitchen where Evelyn was pacing with the phone pressed to her ear. Actually, Byron said loudly enough for Santiago to hear through the phone, Emma needs to rest. No visitors for at least a week. Doctor's orders. Evelyn covered the phone. Byron, he's her uncle. No visitors. She needs rest and quiet. Evelyn's expression hardened, but she relayed the message to Santiago. When she hung up, she turned on Byron with barely controlled anger. You didn't have to be rude about it. He's been worried sick. She needs to heal. No distractions. Santiago isn't a distraction. He's family. Evelyn. Byron's voice cut through her protest. Emma almost died. I'm not taking any chances with her recovery. No visitors means no visitors. They stared at each other across the kitchen island. Finally, Evelyn looked away. Fine, but you're being unreasonable. Byron didn't argue. He returned to the living room where Emma was awake, her eyes following him. Is Mom gone? She whispered. Byron checked. Evelyn had retreated upstairs. He could hear water running. She was taking a bath, something she did when she was upset. He sat on the edge of the couch and took Emma's hand. Tell me what happened, Ladybug. All of it. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I'm scared, Daddy. I know. But I'm here now, and I'm going to make sure you're safe. I promise. Can you tell me? She nodded slowly. Uncle Santiago came over. Mom said he was going to help with yard work. But then Mom had to go to the store, and she left me with him. Byron's fist clenched, but he kept his voice gentle. What happened when she left? He took me inside. He said we were going to play a game. But it wasn't a good game, Daddy. Emma's voice broke. He pushed me down the stairs. The basement stairs. He said it was an accident, but he pushed me. I felt his hands. White-hot rage flooded Byron's system. He focused on breathing, on staying calm for Emma's sake. Did Mom come home? Yeah. I was crying, and Uncle Santiago was yelling that I fell, that I was clumsy. But Daddy, I didn't fall. He pushed me. Tears streamed down Emma's bruised face. Mom saw me, and she got really scared. She said we had to call 911. But Uncle Santiago kept saying I just fell, that I was playing and slipped. What did Mom do? Emma hiccuped. She told me to say a car hit me. She said if I told the truth, Uncle Santiago would get in trouble and go away forever, and it would hurt Grandma Shirley. She said Uncle Santiago made a mistake, and everybody makes mistakes, and I should just say the car hit me. Byron felt something inside him crack completely. Did Mom say anything else? She said you'd be mad if you knew Uncle Santiago hurt me. She said you already don't like Uncle Santiago, and this would make everything worse. She said it was better if we just said it was a car accident, and then everything could go back to normal. And you said okay? I was scared, Daddy, and it hurts so much. I just wanted the ambulance to come. Fresh tears spilled over. But when you came to the hospital, I knew I had to tell you the truth. Even if Mom gets mad. Byron pulled Emma as close as he dared without hurting her. You did the right thing, Ladybug. You were so brave. And I'm not mad at you, not even a little bit. Do you understand? None of this is your fault. Is Uncle Santiago going to go to jail? Yes, Byron said quietly. I'm going to make sure of it. What about Mom? That question hurt worse than anything. Byron pulled back and looked at his daughter's face. So young, so hurt, so confused about why her mother had asked her to lie. I don't know yet, Byron said honestly. But I promise you, Emma, you are never going to be unsafe again. Never. I don't care what I have to do. Emma nodded and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep, exhausted by the conversation. Byron sat there watching her breathe, his mind calculating and planning. Evelyn had covered up Santiago's assault on their daughter. She'd coached Emma to lie to doctors and police. She'd chosen her brother over Emma's safety and justice. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that Byron almost couldn't process it. This was the woman he'd loved for 12 years, the woman he'd built a life with. And she'd looked their 7-year-old daughter in the eye and told her to lie about being abused. Byron's phone buzzed. A text from Rod Fuentes. Got the footage? You're not going to like it. Can you meet? Byron typed back. Tomorrow morning. My place. 9 a.m. Thank you. He spent the rest of the evening playing the dutiful husband. He made dinner, checked on Emma, spoke to Evelyn in neutral tones about medications and doctor appointments. She seemed relieved that he wasn't arguing anymore, that things were settling into a routine. She had no idea what was coming. That night, after Evelyn was asleep, Byron went to his office and opened his laptop. He started a new document and titled it simply, Evidence. Then he began typing everything he knew, everyone he'd spoken to, every inconsistency in Evelyn's story. Tomorrow he would see the traffic cam footage. Tomorrow he would start building the case that would put Santiago Webster behind bars. And after that, Byron would figure out what to do about the woman sleeping upstairs who'd chosen her brother over their daughter's truth. He worked until 3 in the morning, compiling data, cross-referencing timelines, mapping out a strategy. This was what he did for a living. He found patterns, identified deceptions, built airtight cases from language and evidence. Now he was going to do it for Emma. Rod Fuentes arrived at 9 sharp, carrying a laptop and a folder thick with documents. He was a tall man in his early 40s, with graying temples and the wary eyes of someone who'd seen too much human darkness. Byron met him at the door and led him to the home office, checking first to make sure Evelyn was occupied with Emma in the living room. Coffee, Byron offered. Already had 3 cups. Let's just do this. Rod set up his laptop on Byron's desk and pulled up a video file. This is from the traffic cam at the intersection of Cedar and Highland, about 2 blocks from your house. I pulled footage from noon to 2 p.m. on the day of the incident. Byron leaned forward, watching as Rod hit play. The screen showed a bird's-eye view of the intersection. Cars passed at normal intervals. Nothing unusual. Watch here, Rod said, pointing to the timestamp. This is roughly when your wife called 911, based on the dispatch log. Byron watched. A few cars passed through the intersection. None of them were speeding. None of them showed any signs of having just hit a child. There's no hit and run on this footage, Byron said slowly. No, there's not. Rod fast-forwarded. I checked every camera in a half-mile radius. No vehicle matching your wife's description. No signs of an accident. No erratic driving patterns. Byron, if a car hit your daughter, it's not on any camera in the area. Show me Santiago Webster's truck. Rod pulled up another clip. This is from earlier that day, 11:43 a.m. He pointed to a silver pickup that turned onto Cedar Street, heading toward the Keller house. That's his truck, right? Byron nodded, recognizing the vehicle and the dented passenger door Santiago had never bothered to fix. Now watch this. Rod forwarded to another timestamp, 1:05 p.m., leaving your neighborhood. The same truck, driving away from the direction of Byron's house. Normal speed, nothing unusual. 15 minutes before your wife called 911, Byron said. Exactly. Rod closed the laptop and looked at Byron with sympathy in his eyes. I'm sorry, man, but the traffic evidence doesn't support a hit and run. And when you add that to the nature of your daughter's injuries. He pulled out a medical report from his folder. I got a copy of the ER notes. The pattern of injuries, the broken ribs, the internal bleeding, the bruising, it's more consistent with a fall or direct impact, not a vehicle collision. Byron sat back in his chair. You're saying Emma wasn't hit by a car. I'm saying the evidence suggests something else happened. What? I don't know. But Byron, if you suspect abuse or assault, you need to report officially. I can't investigate this off the books. I need more evidence first. Something solid. What are you going to do? Byron met his friend's eyes. Whatever it takes to protect my daughter. Rod hesitated, then pulled a USB drive from his pocket and set on the desk. This is a copy of everything I pulled, traffic cams, the medical report, the initial police report your wife filed. Officially, I never gave this to you. Understood? Understood. Thank you, Rod. After Fuentes left, Byron sat in his office with the door locked, reviewing every file on the USB drive. The evidence was circumstantial, but damning. No hit and run on camera. Santiago's truck leaving just before the 911 call. Medical injuries consistent with a fall downstairs, not a vehicle impact. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Byron needed concrete proof that Santiago had pushed Emma. He needed evidence that would stand up in court, that would convince prosecutors to press charges, that would put Santiago away. And he needed to figure out how deep Evelyn's complicity went. Byron spent the next week playing 2 roles. To Evelyn, he was the supportive husband, stressed but holding it together. To Emma, during the brief windows when they were alone, he was the investigator gathering her testimony in detail, recording her statements on his phone, documenting everything. He also started quietly documenting Evelyn's behavior. The way she tensed whenever Byron mentioned calling the police with follow-up questions. The way she'd change her story slightly between retellings. First the car was blue, then dark-colored, then maybe black. The way she discouraged Byron from looking into it further, saying it would just upset Emma to keep bringing it up. On day 8 of Emma's recovery, Santiago called again. Byron listened from a hallway as Evelyn answered. Hey, Santi. No, Byron's still being weird about visitors. I know, I'm sorry. She's doing better. She's up and moving around. Maybe next week. Okay, I'll try to talk to him. Love you too. Byron walked into the kitchen. Was that Santiago? Evelyn jumped slightly. Yeah, he just wanted to check on Emma. He can call me directly if he wants updates. Byron, why are you being like this? He's family. He cares about her. Does he? Byron let the question hang in the air between them. Evelyn's face flushed. What's that supposed to mean? Just seems strange that he hasn't come by at all. Most people would push harder to see a niece who'd been seriously hurt. You told him he couldn't visit, and he just accepted that? Didn't even try? If it were my niece, I'd at least show up with flowers or a card. Something. He respects boundaries. Unlike some people, Evelyn grabbed her purse. I'm going to the pharmacy to pick up Emma's refill. Will you be okay here for an hour? We'll be fine. After she left, Byron went to Emma. I need to ask you something important. Did Uncle Santiago ever hurt you before? Before the basement? Emma bit her lip. Sometimes he would grab my arm too hard. When we were playing, and once he pushed me off the swing at the park. Mom said he was just being rough because he doesn't have kids and doesn't know his own strength. Did Mom see him push you off the swing? Yeah. She told him to be more careful. Byron felt his blood pressure rising. Anything else? He gave me weird compliments, like about my hair or my dress. It made me feel uncomfortable. Did you tell Mom? Once. She said Uncle Santiago was just being nice and I should say thank you. Byron added it all to his growing file. A pattern of inappropriate behavior, escalating contact, boundary violations. And Evelyn had minimized or ignored all of it. That evening, Byron made a decision. He called his lawyer, a woman named Tracy Boyle, who specialized in family law. He explained the situation carefully, clinically, the way he would present evidence in a deposition. You need to file for emergency custody, Tracy said immediately. If your wife coached your daughter to lie about abuse, that's child endangerment. Document everything. Record conversations if you can. Massachusetts is a two-party consent state for recordings, but you could take notes contemporaneously. What about Santiago? File a police report with a real story. Use your daughter's testimony. The traffic cam footage will support that the hit and run didn't happen. Once the police start investigating, they'll find more. What do you mean? Tracy paused. Byron, guys like this, they're not usually first-time offenders. If Santiago assaulted your daughter and your wife covered it up, there's probably more. Talk to the police. Let them dig into his background. Byron thanked her and hung up. Then he sat in his office and stared at the evidence spread across his desk. Tomorrow, he would go to the police. Tomorrow, he would start the official process that would rip his family apart. But tonight, he checked on Emma one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, her breathing steady, her small face relaxed. Byron kissed her forehead and made another silent promise. Justice was coming. For Emma. For any other children Santiago might have hurt. And for Evelyn. Byron didn't know yet, but she would face consequences for choosing her brother over their daughter's safety. The next morning, Byron drove to the Cambridge Police Department and asked to speak with a detective about child abuse. They put him in a small interview room with gray walls and a scar table. Detective Guillermo Metcalf arrived 15 minutes later, a stocky man in his 50s with kind eyes and a notepad. Mr. Keller, I understand you want to report an assault on your daughter. Byron told the story from beginning to end. Emma's injury, the hospital, the Morse code conversation, her testimony about Santiago pushing her, Evelyn coaching her to lie. He showed Metcalf the traffic cam footage, the medical records, his documentation of everything. Metcalf listened without interrupting, taking notes. When Byron finished, the detective sat back and studied him. This is serious, Mr. Keller. You're accusing your brother-in-law of assaulting a child and your wife of obstruction. You understand the implications? I understand. But my daughter told me the truth, and I believe her. We'll need to interview Emma, with a child psychologist present. I expected that. When? I'll set it up for tomorrow. In the meantime, I'm going to open an investigation into Santiago Webster. Run his background. See if there are any priors or complaints. Metcalf leaned forward. Mr. Keller, does your wife know you're here? No. You might want to consider what happens when she finds out. I know exactly what happens. But my priority is protecting my daughter. Metcalf nodded slowly. All right. We'll be in touch within 24 hours. In the meantime, don't confront Santiago or inform him about the investigation. Let's handle it. Byron agreed and left the police station feeling both relieved and terrified. He'd set things in motion now. There was no going back. When he got home, Evelyn was in the kitchen making lunch. She smiled when she saw him. Where were you? Had to run an errand. How's Emma? Good. She asked about going back to school next week. Let's see what the doctor says at her follow-up. They moved through the afternoon in careful choreography. Two people who lived together but were no longer on the same side. Byron wondered if Evelyn could feel it, the shift in the foundation of their marriage. If she sensed that something fundamental had changed. That evening, while Emma was watching a movie and Evelyn was upstairs, Byron's phone buzzed. A text from Detective Metcalf. Call me. Important. Byron stepped outside onto the back deck and dialed. Mr. Keller, we ran Santiago Webster's background. Metcalf's voice was grim. He's got priors. 2 complaints of inappropriate contact with minors from different towns. One was dropped. The other he pleaded down to a misdemeanor. He's not on the registry because the charges were reduced. But Byron, there's a pattern here. Byron gripped the phone tighter. What kind of pattern? He targets families where he has access, befriends parents, spends time with the kids. There were allegations that he never hurt the children physically before this. That's an escalation. So, what happens now? We're getting a warrant to search his residence. Based on his priors and your daughter's testimony, we have probable cause. We're executing it tomorrow morning. I wanted to give you a heads up. What are you expecting to find? Metcalf was quiet for a moment. The truth. Byron didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed next to Evelyn, listening to her breathe, wondering how he'd been so blind. How many times had Santiago been alone with Emma? How many times had Evelyn dismissed warning signs or enabled access? At 6 a.m., Byron gave up on sleep and went to his office. He pulled up everything he could find on Santiago Webster, public records, social media, employment history. Santiago had worked at a youth community center 3 years ago. He'd been a volunteer basketball coach. He'd had jobs that gave him access to children. And Evelyn had welcomed him into their home, left him alone with Emma, ignored every red flag. At 9:30, Byron's phone rang. Detective Metcalf. We executed the warrant an hour ago. Metcalf's voice was tight. Byron, you need to turn on the news. Byron grabbed the remote and flipped to a local news station. The banner across the bottom read, Child Abuse Investigation. Cache of illegal material found. The reporter stood outside a modest apartment building. Police executed a search warrant this morning at this Cambridge apartment complex, leading to the arrest of 34-year-old Santiago Webster. According to sources close to the investigation, police discovered a large quantity of child sexual abuse material, as well as evidence suggesting Webster may have been producing such content himself. Police are asking anyone with information about potential victims to come forward. Byron felt the room spin. He sat down hard in his desk chair. We found thousands of images and videos, Metcalf said quietly. Some are downloaded. Others, he made them himself. There are at least 6 identifiable victims. We're working to track them down. Is Emma? No, we didn't find any images or videos of your daughter. But, Byron, the things we found, this man is a predator. Your daughter was incredibly lucky you figured it out when you did. Byron's hands were shaking. Where is he now? Custody. He'll be arraigned this afternoon. Federal charges for the CSAM, state charges for assaulting Emma. He's not getting bail. Does my wife know? Not from us. But it's all over the news now. As if on cue, Byron heard a scream from upstairs. He dropped the phone and ran. Evelyn was standing in their bedroom, staring at the TV with her hand over her mouth. The news was showing Santiago's booking photo. No, Evelyn was saying. No, that can't be right. They made a mistake. Evelyn. She spun on him. Did you know about this? Did you do this? I reported what Santiago did to Emma. The police investigated. This is what they found. You went to the police? Evelyn's face was white. Behind my back? Byron, how could you? How could I? Byron's voice rose. Our daughter told me the truth, and I believed her. Unlike you. She was confused. She hit her head. Santiago didn't mean to. He pushed her down the stairs, Evelyn. He assaulted her, and you covered it up. You coached our 7-year-old to lie to protect your brother. He made a mistake. He didn't make a mistake. He's been abusing children for years. They found evidence, Evelyn. Thousands of images. Other victims. Evelyn sank onto the bed, her face crumbling. That's not possible. Santiago wouldn't. He's my brother. He wouldn't do that. He did. And you chose him over Emma's safety. They stared at each other across the bedroom. Downstairs, Emma called out for Byron. He left Evelyn sitting there and went to his daughter. Daddy. Emma's eyes were worried. I heard yelling. Everything's okay, Ladybug. The police arrested Uncle Santiago. He can't hurt you anymore. Emma's body sagged with relief. Really? Really? He's going to jail for a long, long time. Emma started crying, not from fear or pain, but from relief. Byron held her carefully, mindful of her healing ribs, and let her sob into his shoulder. Behind him, he heard Evelyn coming down the stairs. She stopped in the doorway of the living room. Her eyes were red and swollen. Emma, baby, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have protected you. Emma didn't move from Byron's arms. Evelyn, Byron said quietly, I think you should pack a bag. Stay with your mother for a few days. Emma, and I need time. You can't kick me out of my own house. I am. The alternative is that I call my lawyer right now and file for emergency custody. Emma's testimony about you coaching her to lie is documented. You endangered our daughter. So you can leave voluntarily, or I can make this a lot worse for you. Your choice. Evelyn looked at Emma, who had her face buried in Byron's shoulder. Something shifted in Evelyn's expression, maybe the final understanding of what she'd done, of what she'd lost. I'll pack a bag, she whispered. An hour later, Evelyn left. Byron watched her car pull out of the driveway, carrying his wife away and leaving behind the wreckage of their family. He locked the doors and returned to Emma. They sat together on the couch, and Byron pulled up a kid's movie on the TV. But neither of them really watched it. They just sat there, together, beginning the long process of healing. 2 days later, Detective Metcalf called with an update. The DA is moving forward with charges against Santiago, federal CSAM charges, state assault charges, and we're working with other jurisdictions to identify additional victims. He's looking at 20 to 30 years minimum. Good, Byron said. There's something else. One of the victims we identified, a girl in Vermont, she came forward after seeing the news. She said Santiago assaulted her 3 years ago when he was working at a community center. She told her parents, but they didn't believe her, said she was making it up for attention. Byron closed his eyes. How many others? We're finding more every day. But Byron, your daughter was brave. Her testimony was the catalyst for all of this. Without her, Santiago would still be out there. After hanging up, Byron went to Emma's room. She was drawing at her desk, her cast propped on a pillow. Hey, Ladybug, can I talk to you for a minute? Emma set down her crayon. Am I in trouble? No, never. I just wanted to tell you something. Byron sat on the edge of her bed. What you did, telling me the truth about Uncle Santiago, was incredibly brave. And because you told the truth, the police found out that he'd hurt other kids too. You helped stop him from hurting anyone else. Emma's eyes widened. Really? Really? You're a hero, Emma. You saved other kids by being brave enough to tell the truth. Even though it made Mom mad, Byron chose his words carefully. Mom made a mistake. A big one. She was trying to protect Uncle Santiago when she should have been protecting you. But that's not your fault, and it's not your responsibility to fix. Do you understand? Emma nodded slowly. Is Mom coming back? I don't know yet. We need some time to figure things out. Okay. Emma picked up her crayon again. Daddy, I'm glad you believed me. I'll always believe you, Ladybug. Always. Over the next 2 weeks, the case against Santiago Webster became a national news story. The details that emerged were horrifying. A decade of abuse, dozens of victims, a carefully constructed pattern of grooming and exploitation. Santiago had used his charm, his family connections, his access to children through various jobs and volunteer positions. The story dominated local news cycles. Byron's phone rang constantly with reporters wanting interviews. He declined all of them, focused solely on Emma's recovery and well-being. Evelyn stayed with her mother. She called several times a day, crying, apologizing, begging Byron to reconsider. He listened but didn't engage. Tracy Boyle, his attorney, had filed for legal separation and was preparing custody documents. Your wife's actions constitute child endangerment, Tracy explained during one of their meetings. She coached Emma to lie to protect someone who'd assaulted her. That alone is enough for you to get primary custody. But Byron, you need to decide what you want. Divorce? Reconciliation with conditions? What's best for Emma? Byron didn't have an answer yet. The betrayal was too deep, too fresh. How could he trust Evelyn again? How could Emma? But there was one thing Byron was certain about. Santiago Webster would never hurt another child. And Byron would do whatever it took to keep Emma safe. 3 weeks after Santiago's arrest, Byron stood in his office reviewing documents Tracy had prepared. The legal separation papers, the custody petition, the restraining order prohibiting Evelyn from making decisions about Emma's care without Byron's approval. His phone buzzed. Another news alert about the case. Santiago's arraignment had been postponed because prosecutors kept discovering more victims. The count was up to 23 children across 4 states. Emma was doing better physically. Her ribs were healing, the bruises had faded, and she'd started seeing a child therapist twice a week. Dr. Saragero was patient and skilled, creating a safe space for Emma to process the trauma. But Emma still had nightmares. She still flinched at loud noises. She was 7 years old, and she'd learned that adults couldn't always be trusted to protect her. That knowledge made Byron's chest ache every single day. A knock at the front door pulled him from his thoughts. Through the window, he saw Shirley Harrison, Evelyn's mother. Byron hesitated, then opened the door. Shirley looked 10 years older than the last time he'd seen her. Her face was drawn, her eyes red-rimmed. "Byron, may I come in? Emma's napping. I'm not here to see Emma. Not yet. I'm here to see you." Byron stepped aside and let her in. They sat in the living room, an uncomfortable distance between them on the couch. "I need to apologize," Shirley said quietly. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened, and I need to apologize to you. For raising Santiago the way I did. For not seeing what he was. For making excuses. You didn't know. I did. Or I should have." Shirley's hands twisted in her lap. There were signs when he was younger. Things missing from neighbors' houses when he visited. A complaint from a teacher about inappropriate touching. I told myself it was normal boy behavior, that he'd grow out of it. I made excuses because he was my son and I loved him. Evelyn did the same thing. I know. I taught her to do that. To protect family above everything else. When Roger died, that was my husband, Evelyn's father. I told both my kids that we only had each other, that we had to stick together no matter what. Shirley looked up, tears streaming down her face. I taught my daughter to protect a monster instead of her own child. Byron, I am so sorry. Byron didn't know what to say. This woman had lost her son to prison and her daughter to her own choices. She was facing the reality that her family's dysfunction had enabled years of abuse. "What do you want from me?" Byron asked. "Nothing. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. What I did wrong. What Evelyn did wrong. And I wanted to tell you that you're right to protect Emma the way you are. She needs someone who puts her first." Shirley stood to leave. "One more thing. I've decided to testify for the prosecution if they need me. Against Santiago. I've told them about the incidents when he was younger, the warning signs I ignored. It's the least I can do." After Shirley left, Byron sat in the quiet house and tried to process the conversation. It didn't change anything. Santiago was still a monster. Evelyn had still betrayed Emma's trust, and their family was still shattered. But maybe it was the first crack in the Webster family's wall of denial. That evening, Detective Metcalf called again. "Byron, we've identified all 23 victims. The youngest was 4 years old. The oldest was 12. Santiago's going away for a very long time. When's the trial? Probably won't be one. His lawyer's talking plea deal. The evidence is overwhelming." "What kind of plea?" 35 years minimum. No parole eligibility for 25. It's a life sentence in everything but name. Byron felt something loosen in his chest. "Good. There's something else. A few of the victims' families want to meet you and Emma. To say thank you. Without Emma's testimony, some of them might not have come forward. I need to ask Emma if she's comfortable with that. Of course. No pressure. But these families, they've been waiting years for someone to believe them. Your daughter gave them that." After hanging up, Byron went to Emma's room. She was awake, reading a book about ocean animals. "Hey, Ladybug, I need to ask you something. Emma looked up. Okay. Some of the other kids that Uncle Santiago hurt, their families want to meet you. To say thank you for being brave and telling the truth. You don't have to if you don't want to. But would you be okay with that? Emma thought about it for a long moment. Will you be there? The whole time. Right beside you. Then okay. I want to meet them. 2 days later, Byron and Emma attended a gathering organized by victim advocates at a community center. 12 families were there. Parents and children who'd been waiting years for justice. Some of the kids were teenagers now, having suffered abuse when they were Emma's age. Others were closer to Emma's current age, their trauma still fresh. Emma held Byron's hand tightly as they entered the room. A woman approached them, middle-aged, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. You must be Emma. I'm Patricia. My daughter Lucy is over there. She pointed to a girl about 10 years old sitting with her father. She wanted to meet you. Would that be okay? Emma nodded and walked over with Byron. Lucy looked up and smiled shyly. Hi, Emma said. Hi, you're really brave. So are you. The two girls talked quietly while Byron stood with Patricia and the other parents. They shared stories, not of the abuse, but of the aftermath. The struggle to be believed. The shame and isolation. The relief when Santiago was finally arrested. Your daughter saved my daughter, Patricia said to Byron. Lucy told us what happened 3 years ago, and we didn't believe her. We thought she was confused or making it up. When we saw the news about Santiago's arrest and your daughter's testimony, Lucy told us again. This time we listened, but it took your daughter being brave first. Similar stories rippled through the room. Parents who dismissed their children's complaints. Families who'd been told they were overreacting. Kids who'd lived with the trauma in silence because no one would believe them. And then Emma had spoken up. She told the truth even though it was hard, even though it meant her mother would be angry, even though it shattered her family. That truth had broken open the case. That truth had given other children permission to speak. That truth had put Santiago Webster where he belonged. Byron watched Emma talk with the other kids, seeing her realize that she wasn't alone, that what happened to her had happened to others, that speaking up had mattered in ways she couldn't have imagined. This was healing, Byron realized. Not the kind that happened overnight, but the slow, painful kind that came from knowing you'd survived and helped others survive too. After the gathering, Byron and Emma stopped for ice cream on the way home. Emma got her usual, chocolate with rainbow sprinkles. Byron got coffee, and they sat in the car in the parking lot, eating in comfortable silence. Daddy, Emma finally said. When is Mom coming home? Byron had been dreading this question. I don't know, Ladybug. Mom made a big mistake, and we need time to figure out if she can fix it. I miss her sometimes, even though I'm still mad at her. That's okay. You can miss her and be mad at her at the same time. Both feelings are real. Do you miss her? Byron thought about it honestly. Yeah, sometimes I do, but I'm also really angry at her for not protecting you. Are you going to get divorced? Maybe. I don't know yet. Would that be okay with you? Emma shrugged, licking her ice cream. I just want to feel safe. And I feel safe with you. Byron felt his throat tighten. You'll always be safe with me. I promise. They finished their ice cream and drove home. That night, Byron tucked Emma into bed and read her 2 chapters of the fantasy book they'd been working through. When she fell asleep, he sat at her doorway for a long time, watching her breathe, grateful that she was alive and healing and brave. The next morning, Byron called Tracy Boyle. I want to move forward with a divorce. Full custody of Emma, with supervised visitation for Evelyn once Emma's therapist clears it. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Evelyn made her choice when she asked Emma to lie. She chose Santiago over her own daughter. I can't forgive that. And more importantly, Emma can't trust her. Not right now. Maybe not ever. All right, I'll draw up the papers. After hanging up, Byron felt a strange sense of relief. The decision was made. No more waiting, no more wondering. He was protecting Emma the only way he knew how, by removing the people who'd failed to protect her. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. Evelyn didn't contest custody, didn't fight Byron's terms. She signed the papers in her mother's living room and moved back to Connecticut, broken and ashamed. Santiago Webster pleaded guilty to all charges in a deal that gave him 38 years in federal prison. The judge called him a threat to society and a predator of the worst kind. Santiago showed no emotion during sentencing, didn't apologize, didn't even look at the victims' families who'd filled the courtroom. Byron attended the sentencing with Emma, who sat beside him in her best dress, holding his hand. When the judge read the sentence, Emma squeezed Byron's fingers and whispered, "He can't hurt anyone now." "No, Ladybug, he can't." The story made national news again. Major outlets picked it up. Father believes daughter's secret message, uncovers serial child abuser. Byron declined interview requests, but Emma's story spread anyway. She became, in a way, a symbol, proof that children should be believed, that speaking up matters, that one person's courage can change everything. Byron worried about the attention at first, but Emma seemed to handle it well. She understood that her story was bigger than just her now. It was about all the kids Santiago had hurt and all the kids who might be hurt in the future if adults didn't listen. 6 months after Santiago's sentencing, Byron and Emma had dinner with Rod Fuentes and his family. Rod's wife made enchiladas, and his teenage kids taught Emma card tricks. Over dessert, Rod pulled Byron aside. "You did good, man. Not every father would have believed his kid when it meant going against his wife. I just did what any parent should do." "No, most parents would have wanted to believe the easier story. You chose the hard truth. That takes guts." Byron looked through the doorway to where Emma was laughing at something Rod's son had said. She still had nightmares sometimes. She still saw Dr. Guerra twice a week. But she was laughing again, playing again, being a kid again. "She's the brave one," Byron said. "All I did was listen." That night, driving home, Emma was quiet in the back seat. Byron glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "You okay, Ladybug?" "Yeah, I was just thinking, if I hadn't told you the truth, Uncle Santiago would still be out there, hurting kids. But you did tell me, and you were so brave to do it. I'm glad I learned Morse code." Byron smiled. "Me too." They drove through the dark streets of their neighborhood, past the houses Byron had canvassed looking for witnesses, past the spot where Evelyn had claimed a car had hit Emma. So much had changed in 6 months. Their family had imploded. Their life had been turned inside out. But Emma was safe. Other children were safe. And Byron had learned that protection sometimes meant tearing everything down and rebuilding from ruins. A year after Santiago's arrest, Byron and Emma had settled into their new normal. The house was quieter with just the two of them, but it felt safer. Emma had finished 2nd grade and was looking forward to 3rd. She still saw Dr. Guerra, but less frequently now. The nightmares had mostly stopped. Evelyn sent cards and gifts for Emma's birthday and holidays. She'd completed a court-mandated parenting course and therapy program. The supervised visitation had started 3 months ago, 1 hour every 2 weeks at a family center with a counselor present. Emma was polite during these visits, but distant. She answered Evelyn's questions, accepted her hugs, but there was a wall between them that hadn't been there before. Trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. Byron didn't know if it ever would be, and he'd made peace with that. He'd also made peace with something else. He was enough. He could be the parent Emma needed. He could give her stability and safety and love without a partner who'd proven she couldn't be trusted to protect their child. One Saturday afternoon, Byron was in the kitchen making sandwiches when Emma came in holding an envelope. "What's that?" Byron asked. "It came in the mail. It's from Lucy's mom." Byron wiped his hands and opened it. Inside was a card with a photo. Lucy at her middle school graduation, smiling and healthy and clearly thriving. The note from Patricia read, "Dear Byron and Emma, Lucy wanted you to see this. She's doing so well now. She made honor roll and joined the drama club. She talks about Emma all the time, says Emma is her hero. We'll never be able to thank you enough for believing Emma and bringing Santiago to justice. You gave Lucy her life back. With love and gratitude, Patricia." Emma read the card over Byron's shoulder. "Can we put on the fridge?" "Absolutely." They pinned it up next to Emma's artwork and school photos. Another reminder that speaking up had mattered, that truth had power, that one brave 7-year-old girl had changed lives. That evening, Byron and Emma went to the park where Emma used to play before the assault. She'd avoided it for months, but lately she'd been saying she wanted to try going back. They brought a soccer ball, and Emma practiced dribbling while Byron played goalie. "Daddy, watch this." Emma did a spin move and kicked the ball past Byron into the makeshift goal. "Nice. When did you learn that?" "Mia taught me at recess." They played until the sun started setting, painting the sky in oranges and purples. Walking back to the car, Emma slipped her hand into Byron's. "Daddy, I'm happy." Byron looked down at his daughter, scarred but healing, hurt but surviving, broken but putting herself back together piece by piece. "Yeah, Ladybug. Me too." It wasn't the ending Byron had imagined for their family. It wasn't neat or clean or easy, but Emma was safe. She was believed. She was healing. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Santiago Webster would spend the rest of his life in prison. Evelyn would spend the rest of hers trying to rebuild a relationship with the daughter she'd failed. And Byron would spend the rest of his making sure Emma knew she was loved, believed, and protected. The nightmare was over. The healing had begun. And sometimes that was its own kind of happy ending. 2 years after Santiago's conviction, Byron received a letter from the Department of Justice. They wanted him to speak at a national conference on child safety and advocacy. His story, or rather, Emma's story, had become a case study in how believing children and taking their reports seriously could stop predators. Byron showed the letter to Emma, who was 9 now and more confident than she'd been in years. "What do you think?" he asked. "Should I do it?" Emma read the letter carefully. "Will it help other kids?" "I think it might." "Then you should do it." "But Daddy, I want to come with you. I want to tell my part of the story too." Byron hesitated. "Are you sure? It's a lot of adults, a lot of attention." "I'm sure. Dr. Guerra says sharing our story helps other people, and I want to help." So Byron accepted, and 3 months later, he and Emma stood together at a podium in Washington, D.C., addressing a room full of law enforcement officials, social workers, and child advocates. Byron told his part. The hospital call, the Morse code conversation, the investigation, the decision to believe Emma even when it meant challenging everyone else. Emma told her part, being scared, being brave, learning that speaking up mattered. The audience gave them a standing ovation. Afterward, dozens of people approached to thank them, to share similar stories, to ask advice. One woman, a victim advocate from Texas, pulled Byron aside. "You know what your story does? It shows other parents that believing their kids is possible even when it's hard, even when it means confronting uncomfortable truths. You gave parents permission to trust their children." That phrase stuck with Byron. Permission to trust their children. How many kids were out there right now, trying to tell adults what was happening to them, only to be dismissed or ignored? How many other Emmas were waiting for someone to believe them? On the flight home, Emma fell asleep against Byron's shoulder. He looked down at her peaceful face and thought about the girl she'd been at 7, terrified and hurt, blinking out a desperate message in the hospital. And then the girl she'd become, strong and articulate, willing to share her story to help others. She'd survived. More than that, she'd thrived. Byron had kept his promise. He'd protected her, believed her, and helped her heal. And in doing so, he'd helped dozens of other children find their voices and their justice. Santiago Webster had taken so much from so many. But he hadn't won. The children had won. Emma had won. And Byron, sitting on that airplane with his daughter asleep against his shoulder, felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Genuine peace. The fight had been long. The cost had been high. His marriage was over. His trust had been shattered. But Emma was safe, whole, and happy. In the end, that made everything worth it. Byron Keller had faced an impossible choice: believe a convenient lie or pursue a devastating truth. He'd chosen the truth. He'd chosen Emma, and that choice had changed everything. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.